You may have asked the question, could I take this tablet of mine and could I use it as a musical instrument, say on stage? Well, maybe with the help of this device here, known as a dock, and this particular one's made by Alesis, called the IO dock. You technically can. And we're going to show you that today on an all-new episode of Bars. And back on the glitch cam. So let me tell you my approach to this particular item. What I'm thinking of is the tablet is something that allows you to download different apps, different sounds, and you can then plug in a keyboard, you can take it on stage, you could play these, you could continue to swap them in and out. It's sort of a generic platform from which to launch a bunch of different music apps, because we all know there's a rush to create all these great new apps for a great new buying market in tablet land. So that was what I was thinking, musician or maybe even music production. So I picked up one of these and I'll give you a, this is what it looks like with the dock in use. Cut to the back. I'll give you guys a little tour of the IO dock. Now keep in mind, this tablet is old, okay? And the IO dock is old, and I'm gonna get into the cons of what this means when you end up with old stuff. But for those of you wondering, what does this thing do? On the back here, there's the power switch, of course, is a favorite of mine. If you've watched my videos, I always start with the power button. If it has a power button, you have a quality item. Then there's a video out. There is a jack for a foot switch if you're playing piano, sustain, that kind of thing. There are two XLR inputs right next to each other. They're also multi-purpose. You could use 1/4 inch. They have gain knobs for each. There are two outputs, a left and a right for stereo. There is a switch for phantom power. That is interesting. On the side of this guy, I'll just turn it for you. There is the headphone out, right? Not a bad thing to have. The headphone out has its own volume, and of course there's a volume for the main outs. So that is essentially, oh, I forgot, on the side is MIDI in, MIDI out, and USB. We're gonna get to the USB in a minute, so hang on. That will be discussed ad nauseum. So let me tell you the cons of this thing first, because it's kind of a downer. These devices, and all computers have pretty much had this about them, these devices are locked to their time period. So as the OS gets upgraded, right, eventually you can't upgrade your hardware to the new OS. It won't run. And if you can't upgrade the OS, you can't run new apps. So the only thing that will run on your device is going to be apps that were available at the time when it was current. And so this thing is really interlocked specifically to whatever apps are available. This is one that I have up. You hear a little noise on there. We're gonna get into that in a minute. In fact, before we go any further, that's a problem with these guys, is unreliability. So these devices are really stuck in this specific time period with which they're made in terms of the software and the hardware. And don't expect the fantasy world of I'm always gonna have sounds that will keep coming up for me to choose from. It's not gonna happen. Okay, let me tell you the next thing that is wrong with the IO dock that I found. So this falls on the software app developers. They're the guys that need to connect their software to the IO dock's hardware. Specifically in this case, I'm talking about the MIDI in and out. So I have plugged a keyboard. Let me, There's a shot of the table there. Here's the keyboard. Okay, I have plugged a keyboard into this thing, and the first thing you realize is that absolutely nothing works with this software in terms of the free apps that I found. I've spent a couple of days downloading pianos, synthesizers from the free zone, trying to see what works with this keyboard. I didn't get a single one to work. Now, there may be some pay-for apps like the Moog one, the Arturia ones, that, of course, because they cost money, developers make it so that they're designed to work with these MIDI devices. The free ones haven't got a single one to work. None of them work. The other thing that I found doesn't work, and this is one of the reasons why I wanted to buy this, was on the back of this, there is a video out, a composite out. And I thought, well, this is kind of cool because I could take this with an RCA cable and I could go grab an old projector from Goodwill and I could plug it in and I could beam whatever's on the tablet. I could play a club with a band and I could beam stuff on the ceiling or the wall, or I could hang a sheet. That kind of thing is really interesting to me. Well, as I stated before, it is up to the developers of the software to make it talk to that. And as far as I know, there were 2 apps that could do it. One was YouTube, the other one was Netflix. I don't have the Netflix app. I do have the YouTube app. Can confirm, doesn't work. So one of the reasons I pulled the trigger on the I/O dock was the fact that you could supposedly run a video signal out. You cannot run a video signal out. This is another disappointment. All right, another disappointment is on the side here you have the 2 MIDIs and in and out, and then you have this USB connector. Well, the USB connector is to upgrade the firmware, of which I've done, but you can't plug in a controller, a USB controller with it. Now, this is an older I/O dock. Newer I/O docks, maybe that's changed. Maybe I'm looking at an old relic and I'm talking about it and people are like, yeah, well, you know, get with the flow. But again, that's my point is if every time I have to buy the new latest thing just for it to be status quo, and then the next month it's gone and people are laughing at you, why would I want to buy it? Why would I want this if it's just going to be a hunk of junk a month later, which in this case, it kind of is. So the third con about this, in terms of like if you really wanted to take your tablet down to the bar and bring up a B3 organ patch on it and bring a controller and play that, is that the iPad is really unreliable right now. And this is not a dig specifically on Apple products. They've had this thing going for a long time where they say, oh, it's Apple, it just works. Working as an AV tech in the corporate world, I can tell you from having to set up Apple laptops for presenters at speaking conferences, the Apple stuff 100% of the time does not work. It needs a dongle, it needs a connector, it needs some kind of foozling somewhere within its settings. They've never worked. You've never been able to just plug them in and get them to work. And the same thing is kind of true of this. There's latency issues. It's not the fastest thing on the planet. It also crashes a lot. I call my iPad Crashy. That's the nickname for it. It just blacks out and reboots all the time. Also, I found with some of these apps, this is Sample Tank I have up. This is the free version. There's a paid-for version that you can get. And I'm hitting the keyboard right now, and it's not doing anything. And of course, if you go to settings, right, you'll see there's a switch for MIDI controller, and you know, it doesn't matter what it's on or what channels or anything like that. It just will not work because they intend, I guess, to use it with their specific IK multimedia hardware that they sell, but you can still touch it and play it that way. Now you hear noise on that, right? So what that is It's just unreliable. You have to keep rebooting it until it goes away. All right, I'm going to talk about some of the pros of the I/O dock right now. And of course, I assume that if you're out there shopping for these things, you're going to get one of the more modern ones. You may not get the Alesis, you might get the Behringer, you might get the Focusrite. I haven't looked at those. I don't know what the latest offerings are. I'm just giving you sort of an overall scoop of what the concept is of having a tablet be your main sound engine and then docking into a station and using that creatively. I showed you how like the MIDI doesn't necessarily work with any of the software I tried that was free. Again, if you know of like some paid software, I don't really want to go out experimenting just to see if my MIDI keyboard will fire it up. Again, if you update the machine, again, if you update the software, maybe all of a sudden the MIDI controller stops working. So you can't even trust buying into something that works now. It may not work later. But here's some cool things about this that you might be into. For one, the headphone out on the pad is right here, and the one on the I/O dock is right underneath it. So it's not really a big, huge nicety, but the station makes it nice, and not having the weight on the jack makes it nice. And you could plug in a nice condenser microphone. So if you want to do podcasting, if you want to do some sort of live streaming on one of the various channels, this could be a nice live stream machine where you can plug in some nice mics, have some nice headphones. However, I have thought about using it for Skype. Skype won't run on this older iPad, but maybe if you had a newer one, it might be a great Skype machine to be able to, plug in a good, like an RE20 or like a Shure SM7, something like that. If you're a podcaster has those and you're gonna be on someone else's show, try to use your stuff if you can. Another thing that I think is just great for this is using it as some type of vocal effects processor. Now here's one I've been using. This is called the Voice Express. This is a free one, and I found it works pretty good. Let me pop it up on the screen there. So it won't recenter itself. It only comes in sideways. But if you wanted to if you're gonna go out and you're gonna buy a vocoder, right? And you have a tablet, you might just pick up something like one of these docks, and you might just spend some money or get the free one on some of these vocoder software. So this is the robot voice. Change some tone, the face, the effects, the reverb, add some delay, make it sound like it's from out of this world. So that's pretty cool for if you just want some kind of a robot thing. I actually use that as a gag as a robot reporter in one of my videos called public service announcement from our galactic overlords. You can find a playlist of 3 of the videos that I made. There's 2 more that are unreleased, mainly because, in my opinion, I would describe the series as terrible. However, is available and does use the Voice Express. The last really good thing I can say about this is it does have phantom power. So if you were if you're going to go out and spend money on a separate phantom power device for something like this, you maybe could just kill 2 birds, 1 stone and get one of these docking stations. Not the main reason to buy it, but all these little features on the back are niceties and they do add up, they do make sense. So not a complete lemon, but I feel the fact that I was unable to get MIDI to work with it, I was unable to use the video out, those were the 2 reasons I bought it. It feels like it's kind of an empty gag. It's not that great. I don't pull it out too often unless I'm going to use like maybe the Voice Express, or I'm going to do like some fake hip hop scratching on one of the problems. One of the iRig software apps that they have out there is pretty good for that. But overall, that is my take on this particular I/O dock. Would love to hear some comments if you've had similar problems with finding software that works with any of the stuff that you want this to do. If you've tried some of the other docks, where we are at the state of the union in terms of tablets. Are they reliable? Do they just keep crashing? Are they junk? If I had to sum it up, I would say if you're looking for some sort of mobile computer rig to load stuff onto, stick to a laptop. If it must be a will not die, spend money, get an Alienware, something like that. Get a nice outboard box that you can plug into it, Shadow Hills or something if you're a rich guy. M Audio if you're cheap, I find M Audio stuff at the Goodwill for under $10 all the time. It seems to keep going, doesn't break, so, Can't say anything really bad at the end of the day if you're making art with it. Anyways, this has been an episode of Bars. I hope you enjoyed this episode. It was a lot of fun to make. I got to talk mad trash on the IO dock, and hope to see you on the next one. Ciao.